Own your next move. Bold moves in business and life. Every successful story begins with a bold decision. Join me, Jennifer McPherson, as I uncover conversations with entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators about pivotal moments that shape their journey. Authentic insights, inspiring lessons, and practical wisdom to help you own your own next. Welcome to Own Your Next. I'm Jennifer McPherson. I didn't start my first business until I was 48. I spent decades behind the scenes and decided to give it a go at owning my own next move. Since then, I've built companies, navigated real setbacks, and learned firsthand that success is far more about mindset rather than timing, talent, or even luck. Today's guest is Phil Lockwood. He's a longtime digital agency founder who built and led successful web and marketing businesses before intentionally redesigning his life around his family, travel, and location independence. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you reached out.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your story. So before we get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, you hit on the vast majority of it because I've been in the web and web marketing space for about almost 30 years now. That's been the biggest part of my career for sure. But I grew up in Indiana, went into the Air Force right out of high school. That was my first career. And then did some odds and ends until I came across an HTML book sitting on a table when I was working night security for a biotech company up in Boulder. And I was like, HTML, what is this? Picked it up, and 30 years later, here we are.
Wow.
But about 5 years ago, right at the start of the pandemic, really, I decided to kind of take some time away from the office and took my family. We just started traveling the world constantly, and at first it was kind of this hemisphere because of lockdowns on travel and that sort of thing. But as the world opened up, we went farther and farther, became YouTubers, and we've built about 700,000 subscribers across our channels and platforms. And we've been to dozens of countries, all 7 continents, even within 1 year. So that led to starting our own travel planning, travel advisory company of sorts. So the vast majority of my life these days is focused on travel.
Wow. That's so interesting. And what a fun experience for your whole family, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that you can learn anything more than just traveling around the world and just, immersing yourself into different cultures.
Yeah. And that was such a big part of it because my 3 kids, when we started, were maybe 14 and 8 and 9 or something like that. Schools had closed down because of COVID. So everybody was in online anyway. We were like, well, we don't have to be present for that. So getting out and being able to show them the world up close and in person versus textbooks and classrooms, it was a meaningful, magical experience.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it. I'm interested to learn more about ABC trips. It's definitely feels different than your traditional travel planning. So I'm curious, how did you come up with the idea of designing experiences versus just selling trips or, like the traditional travel agency?
Well, first and foremost, I think that's just because that's where our passion lies, because we didn't start ABC Trips until about a year ago. ABC stands for Always Be Changing, which was our main YouTube channel. And the type of travel that we ended up wanting to do and enjoying most was that adventure travel, like, in the back tiny dirt road towns in India or through the jungles of the Philippines and that sort of thing. And I mean, honestly, when it comes to being a travel agent, I think that there's already so much DIY, so much AI that can come into play for things like that. I mean, if people want to book their own hotels, they can do it. If they want to book their own flights, they can do it.
Yeah.
But it's curating these magical adventures, most of which are family friendly on our website, but they don't have to be. It can be for couples, solos, groups, whatever. And it's just, that's the component that I think AI will probably take a whole lot longer to become capable on. It's the thing where just having that human experience, understanding the expertise that a human can bring to the equation, especially as they understand preferences for everybody. That was the part of it that made it exciting and made it seem like it would actually be a viable business in this day and age.
Yeah. No, I think it sounds fabulous. I mean, to be able to have somebody as experienced as you are with world travel, I think is critical for doing what you're doing now. Like, you know what you're doing, you know the experiences that you've experienced as a family, you know the areas that you're able to go to safely as a family. And I think that's so cool. I'm just curious again about, so when you're traveling with your family and you're building these trips that you actually have, some of them you actually have gone on yourself. How do you decide when you are interacting with your clients? How do you decide where you feel like they should be going versus like, are they describing this to you? Like, this is what we want. And then you kind of come up with a huge plan for them. How does that work?
Honestly, a lot of times, and this is by design, people come to our website and they see the portfolio of experiences that I've already posted. Now, I should mention, I spent the past 2.5 months now completely rebuilding the website, which, by the way, is its own cool story because of my history as a web designer, web developer, web marketer. Now being able to basically spend 80 hours a week doing that for my own business outside of the digital marketing world, the agency world, I should say. Yeah. That's really cool. But I launched with 25 new trip itineraries on our website. I'm trying to get it to about 100. Okay. And I think that'll be the sweet spot where it covers enough of the world and different types of experiences. But the whole idea is not so much, you're not going to find a book now button on there because everything requires quotes based on group size and desired dates and these sorts of things. Yeah. So it's really about inspiring people, giving them ideas. One thing that we've learned as marketers is people have a really hard time as a general rule with visualizing things unless you can put it in front of them. So I just find that that's a great way to say, you're interested in Antarctica? Well, here are half of a dozen really cool experiences that we can put together. But through discussions with them to learn more about their personal preferences, we can actually dial it down and maybe book something completely different for them. Still Antarctica, but maybe a completely different type of experience, like a fly and camp as opposed to a cruise or whatever the case is. So it's all about getting to know each prospect or client once they reach out to us, and then making sure that everything is customized to exactly what they need.
I love that. I love it. I love the personal touch, because a lot of times if you're trying to travel into an unknown territory, particularly outside of the US, like if you're in the US, you know what it's like. Like if you're in Oregon and you go to California, like you already know, the signs, the rules of the road, all the things. But if you're traveling to a different country, particularly if you're bringing your home, your family, sometimes it feels overwhelming not understanding or knowing or how I'm going to navigate and how I'm going to get around. It's, very comfortable to have that personal connection. So that's really cool. I love that. I'm also curious about when did you decide that it was right to turn your previous travel experiences with your whole family as a YouTuber into this travel company? Like, kind of did you learn from that transition it's kind of obvious, but what did you learn from transitioning from the YouTube into the travel company itself?
I think we'd have to kind of go back to when I first started traveling, because that's going to be the biggest difference between old career, new career, right? And it's important to note, and I think this is especially interesting as a conversation for you and I to have, because we have that commonality between our career paths. But when I found that HTML book 30 years ago, that was an exciting time. When I read through it, when I did the exercises, when I learned web design and web development, that was really exciting. I enjoyed the industry. And there have been times over the 25 years that I've owned, 26 years now, owned my own agency, where I've been very engaged and interested, but it's always because we did some sort of a pivot throughout that period of time. Yeah. Turns out, I think I'm pretty ADD, and I kind of suspected that all along, but it wasn't until a few months ago that I was formally diagnosed and then medicated, and it's made all the difference. But I really struggle to do the same thing, even for hours, let alone days, years, and that sort of thing. So I think back to when I was last passionate about my agency, like for an extended period of time, and it was probably the first year after I started it, which is sad, right? To spend that much time in a business that just didn't really feel fulfilling as a general rule. And like I said, there were times when we would kind of pivot, have a new focus where I'd be re-engaged because that was new and exciting. Yeah. But when it came to the travel piece, it wasn't even intentional for us to start traveling and become content creators. It was a couple of things that fit together really nicely. But my oldest daughter, who's from my first marriage, decided she wanted to do in-person high school. So pretty quickly after we started traveling, I want to say maybe a year to a year and a half, she would go back to in-person high school, and we would travel when she was with her mom half the time.
Okay.
And maybe 2 years ago, then my second oldest, who is my younger daughter, kind of went down the same path. You could tell she was getting tired of the travel lifestyle, needed to have more in-person friends and relationships. So he said, all right, we've got to find a way to make that work, because if we can't keep traveling constantly, what we're doing right now just doesn't fly anymore. So that's when we said, you know what, here's an idea. Here's something that we can do from our home in Denver that still leverages all of that experience and expertise and passion that we have for travel. And it really is cool to see how everything is parlayed. Even with the new website that I built, like you can go to our 9-day Galapagos island hopping adventure itinerary, and you can see our 65-minute long form YouTube episode right there that illustrates the entire experience. Wow. I think that's a very unique aspect. That you can go to Black Tomato or Abercrombie & Kent, some of these leading travel itinerary curation companies, they don't have that because they're still travel agents at the end of the day. And maybe it's like little videos that they put together to highlight some of the aspects of a trip or an itinerary. But with ours, people can see our entire Antarctica journey with Seabourn through 3 episodes. And that's why they say, I want that. Book that one for me. And we'll say, we've got some better deals on these other lines. And they'll say, I want the exact thing you did in your episode. Yeah. Oh my God. That's powerful. That is really powerful. And it's really creative to go from, and by the way, I totally get you on the ADD thing. I'm undiagnosed, but I know I have ADD. I can't think of, more than 5 things at one time is pretty much the story of my mind. But what I was going to say is like just going from like the creative mind that you have to be able to say, hey, this travel was so amazing and awesome. And then you're like, but now we have to kind of stop, and that's okay. But what can we do to kind of keep that adventure alive and then curate that into this company is really creative. I'm very impressed by that. Well, thank you. I think a lot of it was just opportunity, things kind of falling together at the right time. Yeah. But one of my favorite things in the world, in the universe, is elegance, when it comes to design, usability, anything, when things fit together very nicely. And that certainly has for us. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. That's awesome. So I am curious. I mean, let's go back to your travel days. Of all of the trips that you've taken, what was one of your favorite and why? It's kind of like asking, I say this all the time, like asking who your favorite child is, right? And you might have favorite children, but you might have favorite children for certain things, I really enjoy this kid's my favorite to travel with. This kid's my favorite to watch TV with or whatever. So it's hard to pin it down to one. I will say that we have traveled the Philippines more than anywhere else because it had so much variety and it was such a beautiful place and it was off the beaten path from what most Americans experience. Yeah. So we ended up creating a second YouTube channel just dedicated to our Philippine stuff. We had a second home there until last year. So that's definitely at the top of the list. Otherwise, I will say India, probably the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Oh, phenomenal experience, just a very unusual country. Japan is just awesome in so many ways. Florence is my favorite city in the world. Oh, really? My husband and I are going to Italy this year. Oh, are you hitting Florence? We will be there. So yeah, I'm excited about that. What was one of the scariest moments that you ever had while on your adventures? It was early on, like kind of our first year. We chartered a catamaran and island hop the Exumas in the Bahamas. This is going to be pretty awful content if anyone goes back and sees it, because it was in our early days and we were doing everything on iPhones and it was just horrible. But it taught me a very valuable lesson about ultimately being responsible for the safety of my family when we travel and not putting too much trust in the experts, that you encounter along the way. So we had a captain on our ship who is also our Bahamas guide, our Exumas guide along the way. And there was one experience in particular particular that's highlighted in one of our episodes where we were going to go into this grotto, the famous grotto from one of the James Bond films. So we just swam off of the back of our boat, our yacht, toward the grotto. It was maybe 50 yards and we had the current at our back. We got up there. The tide was still too high, so you'd have to swim down underwater and then up into the grotto. But in the swim over, like Reagan lost one of her fins. The rock was all razor sharp.
Oh my
And the
God.
current was so heavy. We're all just sitting there. We bailed, but it still took us a half an hour because nobody could swim back against the current to get back to the boat. So we were just stranded. And I'm like, you know what? Somebody could have drowned, and I don't think we got close to that, but it's like, don't assume that the people taking you around know what's best. You still have to be a parent.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That would be really scary. My gosh. So another question I wanted to kind of peek about. So for families and entrepreneurs watching who are curious about travel-based businesses, what has surprised you the most? And I know that this travel company is, what did you say? You're a year into the... Okay. What surprised you the most about running the travel company to what you did when you ran the digital agency? Like, compared to the digital agency, running a travel company is this is a digital agency. So there's similarities sort of, and then there's some that are just complete opposite. What has surprised you the most about the travel agency part?
I think everybody understands the concept of travel. Everybody has interacted with travel. Not everybody has gone through a web marketing project or a website engagement or that sort of thing. So it's like everybody kind of knows the language. It's a different experience for everybody because for some people, travel means going up to the mountains to ski here every weekend in Colorado, right? And for other people, it means vacationing down in Cabo every year. For us, it's something much more elaborate than that, but everybody has their own travel language. And it's just so easy to connect with people. It's such a common conversation starter. So that's been, I think, a way that it's made it very easy to kind of grow the business, from nothing. And it's been a whole lot of fun to take all that experience that I've had working for clients across so many industries over decades and then say, I'm going to put all that expertise into just my business. And like I said, maybe it's 80 hours a week. I mean, I am our own growth hacker, which I think is the ultimate role that any business could have. Yeah. So it's just really neat to see. How everything really kind of fit together after decades spent working for clients in the digital space, where sometimes you succeed, but a lot of times you fail, you come up short, right? And to see that everything is just working as a general rule on the travel side, putting together, leveraging all that experience from the digital agency world, that's been unusual.
Well, and I would imagine that it's way more fun, way more fun. And I say that because, people are coming to you to do something that is like, fun for them or their families or, just like, whereas, when you're doing digital agency, you're dealing with business owners who need you to help either be found or promote them or in some fashion, which it's fun. I mean, we're a marketing agency and we enjoy that really component of it. But when you get to talk to somebody and have their face light up about the dream of this vacation that they've, dreamt about for a long time and get to have this experience with their family along the way, they're never going to forget that. That has to feel so good at the end of the day when you book travel for somebody. And then have you had people come back to you and be like, I'm curious what people say after they go on the travel.
Yeah, we get a lot of really good feedback and we already have good repeat customers, which again, since we're not talking about just booking hotels in Miami for the weekend, we're talking about a lot of bucket list adventures. So we're sending people to the Galapagos and to Antarctica. And yet even in less than a year in business, we've got people who are coming back to say, what's next?
Yeah.
We've got clients who are very similar to us in the sense that they just kind of say, give me ideas. I want stuff. I've spent a lot of money on travel. I've done a lot of really elaborate experiences. Wow me. Come up with something off the beaten path. And so those are the fun ones. But yeah, everybody, like you said, it's completely different from the agency side because when we're selling agency projects, you're selling people work projects, right? For their businesses. And when you're selling travel, you're basically selling people the experiences they want to have when they get out of work. It's like they only work so they can do this other thing. It's a whole lot more fun to focus on that side than the other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can completely tell. And just seeing people, and their reaction when, I don't know. I love traveling. I love it. If I could, I'd do it full time like you did, but I can't. So maybe I'll have to book a trip with you, my whole family. So I have one more question for you. I'm a firm believer that mindset really plays a big role in how you live your life, how you do operate day to day. The world is not always a pleasant place. And sometimes it's a great day and other times it's a bad day. So what mindset shift made the biggest difference in how you show up today in your life? And what old ways of thinking did you have to let go of in order to move forward with that?
We have a phrase that we use here in the family. We didn't make it up, but it's instead of one day, make it day one. And I think that you'll see this even on our story on our website, but I spent all those years in the agency world just feeling like one day I'll be able to do something I'm more passionate about. One day my career will be more fun. And once we started traveling, it was just a seismic shift in terms of how I felt about my day to day, being able to get up and doing something that I truly enjoyed. And I think it just taught me a lesson that even like what you're just saying, you wish you could do it. Obviously you could if you say that's your priority, just like I did. And did it have major implications in terms of income, for my agency, revenue for my agency? Yeah, it absolutely did. But at the end of the day, we choose our priorities. And for me, it was, I'm no longer willing to get up every single day and do something that doesn't really make me happy and fulfilled. And that was the start of a much more enjoyable era within my career.
Wow. That is so true. You're right. You just called me out. It's up to you. You decide. Wow, that's great. Well, where can people find you?
You and I were talking about LinkedIn a little bit ago. I'm just getting back into it after deleting my huge network from the agency world. I started a new profile dedicated exclusively to travel. I think you're my 30th connection. I just saw that this week. Yeah. So thank you. So you could do that. But honestly, if you just go to abctrips.com, there's a big button on every single page at the top. It's Let's Talk. And that's a very cool way to basically you can book time on our calendar. You can send me an email, anything like that. That'll be the one universal way that we can put out there on the internet without me sharing my cell phone number or anything like that.
Yeah, right. Awesome. We'll make sure that we put those links in the show notes. But thank you so much, Phil, for coming on. I appreciate you and everything that you do and your story about deciding one day to just do the thing that you wanted to do is very inspiring for not just myself, but I'm sure many people. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to share that, and it's great to talk to you again.
Yep, you too.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Own Your Next. Subscribe and share with friends. And remember, success isn't behind you. It's boldly owning your next move.